us a story about the woman when you went to, I believe it was Eastern Europe, and you had just done your dissertation based on the Kalam argument. She was a physicist from the Eastern Bloc. This is when communism was dominant in Eastern Europe, and you met her at a conference. Tell them what happened.
Right.
I think that's a great story.
We were both in Germany. She was a Polish physicist and was in Germany on a Humboldt fellowship, as I was. And at the conference, these Humboldt fellows will ask each other, well, what's the subject of your research? And most of these people were molecular biologists and nuclear physicists and so forth. And then I would tell them, well, I'm studying the historicity of the resurrection of Jesus. And it was rather stunning. And Eva said to us at that point, well, physics has destroyed my belief in God. She said, as I look out at the world, all I see is darkness. And as I look into my own heart, all I see is darkness. Darkness without and darkness within. And Jan at that point said to her, well, you ought to read Bill's doctoral dissertation. He uses physics to prove God's existence. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have we done?
Good work, Jan.
And she said, well, I would like to. So we gave her my unpublished doctoral thesis from the University of Birmingham. And over the next few days as she read it, she became more and more excited. She said, I know these physicists that you're quoting. These are colleagues of mine. By the time she got to the end, she said, thank you for restoring my faith in God. I now believe that God does exist after all. And we said, well, would you like to know him in a personal way? That's not the end of the story. We said, would you like to know him in a personal way? And she said, well, sure. And we said, okay, meet us tonight for dinner at this restaurant down in the town, and we'll share with you how you can know God as a personal reality. And so Jan and I spent that afternoon making a handmade 4 spiritual laws from memory. And after dinner, we opened it to Eva on the table and began, just as there are physical laws that govern the physical universe, so there are spiritual laws that govern your relationship with God. And she said, what? Physical laws, spiritual laws, this is just for me. And we shared the 4 laws when we got to the end where there are the circles that represent your life, and we said, which circle represents your life? She clapped her hand over the booklet and said, oh, this is so personal, I cannot answer now. And we said, that's fine. We explained to her how she could give her life to Christ and encourage her to do so on her own. Well, when we saw her the next morning, her face was radiant with joy. She told us she went home that night, got down on her knees, prayed to receive Christ, and she flushed down the toilet all of the tranquilizers and the booze that she had been on, and her life was absolutely transformed.
That's so great. That's terrific.
We gave her a Good News New Testament and explained to her how to have a devotional life with Christ, and then began to pray for her, and our ways parted. But when we saw her again at a conference several months later, she was still walking with the Lord, and she said that her most precious possessions were her Good News Bible and her handmade 4 spiritual laws.
The power of apologetics that God can use to touch a brilliant physicist with the evidence for the faith.